So just to give you guys a little bit of an overview of what the CCD has been doing in terms of networking, this is actually a part of a series that was started last semester. So you might have seen a few events that focused on STEM or the arts. And so just continue to be on the lookout and look on Handshake for any other future events that the CCD puts on that are different industry focused. As well, you might have heard of a few events that go like being blank in the workplace, so being Black in the workplace. But the CCD is also continuing that series and trying to focus on different populations in Davidson and targeting them and kind of providing them with some tools on how to network. So getting into the logistics of what the event's going to look like, we're going to begin with a 30-minute panel presentation followed by 2 to 3 rounds, depending on how much time we have, of networking and breakout rooms. The panel discussion, people are able to post questions in the chat and we will ask them at the end of the panel. The breakout rooms, there will be a list of questions that you all can answer and discuss. And yes, I believe there also should be a Google Doc in the chat. So just link your name for that. Unless there's a Google Doc.
I'll get it, I'm adding it in a minute.
Okay, so I guess to start, if the panelists wouldn't mind introducing themselves, giving a brief overview, your name, your class year, anything else you'd like to add.
Sure, I'll go ahead and go. Derek Thompson, class of 2007. I was a political science major and I got a concentration in education. I think it's a minor now, but whatever. And so currently I work at Wells Fargo, which I think is a fairly consistent theme with a lot of Davidson alums. There's a lot of us over there. And so I have recently moved into the risk area, working in strategy and execution, mainly towards regulatory efforts, but we're part of what's called the control executive organization, part of risk. And so I've been at Wells now 3 years, but I've been in the finance industry since I graduated. Good to see Lamar on here, fellow classmate. So I'll turn it over to you.
Wait, I can probably put it on the radio.
And hi, everybody. My name is Joe Harris. I'm class of 2002. Originally from Columbia, South Carolina, currently living in Washington, D.C. A lot of interesting things going on here, as you might imagine. But I was a history major at Davidson. I think I changed my major. I think I changed it 3 times. I started biology and then went to poli-sci and then ended up at history. So I took this whole liberal arts education thing to a new level. But I was involved in student government. I was a student body president my senior year at Davidson, which led, ironically enough, to my job after Davidson. I worked on Capitol Hill for a guy named John Spratt, who was class of 1964, a congressman from South Carolina for 30 years. And basically, I think I graduated in May and started in his office in June. So I wasted no time. I was very excited to get to DC. In 2002, if you remember, it wasn't that long after September 11th. I remember those days very vividly. My family had some concern about me coming to DC. Obviously leaving the Carolinas and going to a new place during such a strange time. But fortunately, it's everything was fine. I got a great experience. I worked on the Hill for Congressman Spratt for 4 years as a legislative assistant. Came back to South Carolina for law school in 2006. Came back to DC to work for John Spratt after I took the bar. And when John Spratt retired, I went over to the Senate side to work for Senator Lieberman for 3 years. And when he retired, I went into lobbying. I ended up at a small multi-client firm here in DC, and one of my clients was uh, Genworth Financial that did a lot of mortgage insurance work. And it was through working with Genworth and through the mortgage process that I crossed paths with a lot of folks at the National Association of Realtors, which is where I am now. And so I ended up moving over here about 5 years ago, and I'm currently vice president of government advocacy here at NAR. So happy to answer any questions. That gives you just a little flavor of how I ended up here in DC and what I'm doing now.
I'll jump in next, guys. So Lamar Hull, as DT mentioned, I call him DT because that's how I know him. Class of 07, biology major. I also see Clooney here. Clooney was one of my favorites, especially on the basketball team. So currently, I'll take you back. So after I graduated from Davidson, I played basketball in England for a little bit, and then from there, I moved back to Charlotte and started working for a company called Red Ventures, which is a big marketing company in South Charlotte, and grew there, learned a lot of well-respected people, a lot of intelligent people. Red Ventures is doing some pretty awesome things, and then transitioned from there to the Lowe's corporate office in Mooresville, where my role for Red Ventures and Lowe's consisted of being a digital marketing analyst. And so did that for about 7 years, and then just out of sheer luck, opened my own marketing agency about 6 years ago. And so now we are a full service comprehensive digital marketing agency exclusively for physicians, multi-location medical practices, and dentists. So this agency is, just an agency where it's a startup. We're moving along and we're growing and scaling and producing the right systems and processes to impact the healthcare space, getting these doctors, patients in their community. So yeah, that's kind of my story, and yeah, see a lot of familiar faces on here. So thanks for having me.
Ebony, you can go ahead and move on to the next question.
Lovely. So we'll begin with a few questions. So the first one is, how did you determine you wanted to pursue your professional area of interest? Was it always an interest? Was there an aha moment that you had? Or was there a particular undergrad course that you took, an internship, part-time job, or a conversation that maybe led you there? Or did your interest evolve over time?
So I can go first. So I would say I landed in banking purely by accident. Literally, I was looking at going into teaching. I actually had an offer to go teach. And then I also had won a scholarship to go to Princeton Seminary. So, you know, vastly different from banking, but actually it was another Davidson alum, a year older than me, Ricky Childers, who came up to me one day and he was like, "Hey, Bank of America's got this change management program. I think it'd be a good fit. You know, all they want are people that can learn fast, and you need no prior knowledge." I was like, "All right." I said, "Sign me up." And so I was able to secure a job actually before Christmas that year. And so, not having to have that hang over my head, I was just like, awesome. And, and I mean, it's the bank, so it paid pretty well out of school. So I was like, let me give this a shot. And, but I really wanted to teach, but my mom actually, because both my parents are teachers, and she was like, you can always come back to teaching. She was like, try something different, because you know what teaching is from living in our house. So yes, I tried it, and I kind of had to wiggle my way through, but my political science background really helped, in terms of piquing my interest when it came to the regulatory side of banking. And so that's primarily where I have stayed. So I went from Bank of America to consulting with, oh my goodness, Carlisle and Gallagher. Spent 5 years there, 5 years at Bank of America, and then I'm now at Wells. So that's kind of how I ended up where I am.
And as for me, so I took a lot of poli-sci classes at Davidson, even though I didn't major in poli-sci. I probably could have been pretty close to double majoring, but um, I didn't intern on the Hill. I always had an interest in politics, but never saw myself working in Congress. And it wasn't until probably my junior year when I had a conversation with John Spratt, who was then on the board of trustees, and can't remember what committee it was. It was one of those committees where students and faculty and alumni were serving on together. But struck up a conversation with him about you know current events going on in Congress at that time, and sort of meshing that with what we were studying, and kind of got me thinking. Maybe I should be interning. Davidson has a great program, the Davidson and Washington program. But it wasn't until my senior year when you had to decide what you're going to do. You're going to keep going forward with your education. In my case, I was thinking of going to law school, and I decided that I was going to take some time and go to the Hill. And I think it all started. Obviously, it started with the interest in poli-sci and domestic policy. I was never a huge fan of foreign policy. I was always more of a you know social issues, domestic policy type person. But it was that conversation that I had with Congressman Spratt that really got me thinking about what was possible. And when you start thinking about what's possible, then the question becomes, well, how do I get there? How do I achieve, turn this thing that I'm talking about into reality? And so that's where it all started. But then you have to get to work and trying to make that a reality.
Okay, so our next question is, what is most rewarding about your job?
Well, my job is, you never know what you're going to get from one day to the next. I'll tell you that much. And to me, that's what makes it exciting. I love the idea of course, it doesn't apply now as I sit behind my computer, like most of us are doing. All of our meetings are virtual. There's virtually no lobbying going on right now on Capitol Hill. In fact, I think the Capitol is closed to the public for obvious reasons. January 6th has a lot to do with that, but also just the pandemic. But I loved the idea of being on my feet, moving around, not sitting behind a desk, engaging with people, trying to solve problems. A lot of what I do is I essentially lobby members of Congress and congressional staff on behalf of my trade association and the real estate industry. So that involves a lot of different issues: tax policy, infrastructure policy, um, fair housing, affordable housing. There's a lot of different angles to it, and that keeps it interesting for me. I was never one of those people that wanted to focus on one thing and do that one thing all the time. I always wanted variety. and I wanted to be able to be on the move. So, again, under current circumstances, that's not really possible. It takes a lot of effort to, get me from the office, but under normal circumstances, we're always moving around, going from meeting to meeting, going to coffees, it was just a very fast paced environment. And I really enjoyed that part of the job.
Um, in terms of what I enjoy about my job, I mean, the honest answer, of course, is always is the first and the 15th. But I also enjoy the fact that my job allows me really a lot of flexibility in being able to move from project to project, you know, area to area. Because I used to be like in the investment bank, um, working on some of their regulatory efforts, and now being over in risk and working on those. It really gives you it really allows you to like kind of chart your own course, so to speak. Now there are some like restrictions on you got to kind of be in the area that you want to be in to work on some of that stuff. But I think the flexibility, and then also being able to also do things outside of work, and that's part of the reason why I got out of the investment bank was because it was eating up way too much of my day. Whereas normally, like I coach youth football on the side. I advise the Kappas at Davidson's campus. So, being able to do all those other things outside of work and be supported in doing those is another reason I really enjoy my role.
All right. On the flip side of that, what is most challenging about the work that you do?
Um, for me, I would say sometimes it can just be that bank the bank is a very large place. So Wells Fargo has, I think, right now about 280,000 employees, and so sometimes it can be a very matrixed environment where you've got you know 10 people all doing the same thing but in different ways, and trying to get everybody on the same page with those sorts of things. So sometimes navigating just the sheer size of the organization can be a little bit tough. But then you also look at it, and in terms of like, okay, so out of all the different lines of business, I'm dedicated to corporate risk, so that kind of cuts off about 9/10 of the bank. And then from there, I'm down on my smaller team. So it's understanding how to work within your team, but then also how to jump across the organization if you need to find out how other groups are doing things, especially with regulatory efforts. So that can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, but it's also fun because you meet new people, and you find out that, oh, like there's people over here that are doing the exact same thing that I'm doing for another line of business. So it's nice to make those kind of like little aha moments.
Yeah, similar to Derek, I would say the size. Our trade association is one of the largest in the country. We have 1.4 million members, spread across all 50 states and territories. So for a trade association like ours, that is heavily involved in public policy and also the political arena, having a consistent, cohesive voice with so many different members from different states, different backgrounds, different experiences is always difficult. And the way that we're structured, we really do depend on our members to decide, which way our policy is going. And it's always difficult to zero in on policy that speaks to the majority of the members without watering down the message. And it's a constant struggle. It's also an opportunity. to engage the members and see what they're seeing day to day in their lives, in the lives of their clients. So I would say that's the most difficult part, is just, trying to form a consistent, coherent message when you have a lot of voices with different opinions.
Wonderful. So for our either rising seniors or seniors who are currently here, or just for anyone, what are some job search resources you would recommend to students who are interested in this line of work or this field?
In terms of resources, I mean, I've always found that honestly the alumni network is probably your best place to start. Um, get on LinkedIn, kind of look at the look at like the Davidson alumni group. I'm trying to remember. There's a number of different Davidson groups I'm in, but you can kind of just scroll through there, see who's at a particular company that's in the industry that you might want to be in, and just reach out. That's the biggest thing, and I think is the hardest thing for students to kind of get over, is that alums want to help, but if you don't reach out, then nobody knows that you need that help. So just be willing to kind of get out on the limb, send an email, or send a if you got their phone number, give them a call, and just connect with people. And I mean, I think that's the best way to really, break into an industry, because, having an insider, especially if you can find someone that works at a company that you want to work at, makes things a lot easier when they can just pick your resume up out of the pile and put that one on top, which is how I've gotten, honestly, probably almost all my roles to this point. Actually, it is how I've gotten all my roles now that I think about it.
Derek stole my thunder yet again. I was going to mention LinkedIn as a great resource for not only figuring out what you want to do, but also figuring out what opportunities are out there. I think you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of it is about educating yourself about the possibilities. And you're right. The Davidson Alumni Network is a powerful thing. I have personally hired folks and taken in interns and sought folks that had that Davidson College in their education section, because you know what we go through, the rigor, the experience, and that these individuals are going to be well equipped for anything that faces them in the future. And alumni they want to help. They want you to reach out to them. And because most of us had somebody who graduated before we did, who helped us out, who helped us get a start, who answered our questions. And sometimes that's what it takes. It just takes bouncing some ideas off of folks who either live in a city you want to live in or work in an industry you want to work in. And you never know what might become of some of those conversations. I've lost count of how, of how many alumni have reached out, not necessarily for a job, but just wanting to get some advice about how to pursue their next opportunity. So the internet, it's there for a reason. Use it to your advantage. Get on LinkedIn, see who may be working in the industry or be working for, like Derek said, working for a company that you're interested in working in. And if you see that you share Davidson College in common, reach out. The chances are very, very good, very, very high that you will get a response, because, alumni, they do want to help. So one of the benefits of going to a small school.
Thank you. I know I could definitely attest to that. I know a few of the projects I've worked on for the CCD have had me working with LinkedIn profiles, and I've actually reached out to a few people, a few alum, a few psychology alum, And they've been more than happy to assist me, to talk to me, to give me any advice. And so I definitely think LinkedIn is a resource that a lot of people don't really use that often, but I definitely think putting it out there is definitely something, it's a really big resource that we should definitely start taking more advantage of. But our final question is, what advice did you receive or wish you had received that you would offer to current undergraduate Davidson students?
Ooh, this is a tough one. You know, I mean, honestly, okay, so I've got it. So, and I'll credit this one to Donnie Johnson, um, who is class of 2000, I believe. But he told me, he was like, learn how to pick up the phone. Because, being able to like, and, emails are great. I do emails all day, but he was like, that personal like touch to it of you reaching out, punching in that number, calling the person, actually talking to them, that makes sometimes a much bigger impression. Even if you're saying the exact same thing you were saying in the email, people take it differently and they're more likely to be invested in whatever you're asking them. So, when you're doing this outreach to alums, if you have a chance, have a Zoom or have a call with them. Because I mean, that really puts a face, and like, it really, creates a greater picture of who you are as a person. And then, we're now invested. Like, I'm like, oh, I've talked to this person. Like, I feel like I have some, stake in their success. So that would be the thing I think that has helped me most.
For those on the Zoom, I put my contact info in the group chat in case everybody ever wants to reach out. But um, I guess some advice that I would give to you, I've been given a lot of advice over the years, but ultimately, what I will tell you all is, um, very little is going to be handed to you. You got to go out and you got to be creative, think outside the box, and use the tools you have to your advantage to get to where you want to go. And that's um, not anything that I have to drill too much into the heads of Davidson students, but it's a reminder that we have a network that's willing to help. We have obviously technology that makes it a little easier, but be persistent. I know that um, one of the things that I was told from very early on, even when I was at Davidson, um, to after Davidson, is to be patient. And we live in a society where everybody wants it, right now, right away. And sometimes those things that are worth having are worth waiting for. Be persistent, be patient, but persistence, I think, is the right term, and that can apply to whether you're, um, you know, whether you have some, personal issues that you're trying to overcome, professional issue challenges, whether you've been trying to find a job in a certain or an internship in a certain sector and it hasn't happened. You just got to be persistent and put yourself, use those tools to your advantage that helps you get over the hump. And again, sometimes we all need a reminder about ways that we can do that. And it goes back full circle to what I was saying before. Use the folks who have gone before you as a resource. Y'all don't have to reinvent the wheel. Folks have already walked the trail. Um, don't be shy about reaching out, and just like Derek said, preferably by phone. Although for me, email works well too. Um, they're there to help, and they're there to provide those resources and help you think outside the box to get to where you want to go.
Wonderful, thank you. I kind of want to open the floor to the rest of those who are in the Zoom. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
There's got to be some questions.